Robert, welcome to the Guild of Dads podcast.
Joe, good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Likewise. Like we were saying when I spoke with you just before we came on air, I've been familiar with your work for some years now, and weirdly enough, I only picked up the book about 18 months ago, and as I kind of went through it, a lot of kind of pennies dropped in my mind as to the... I like to kind of lace things together and lace concepts together, and that's something that I kind of touch upon with other guests that come on the podcast, and your book kind of laced quite a lot of stuff that I'd read elsewhere into kind of one kind of coherent package, if you like. So that's why I'm so pleased to be able to speak to you today and just find out a bit more about the book. Now, I think the book was done was it around about the year 2000? So we're almost up to 2 decades old now, I think. Is that
Well,
right?
it's getting close to that. The book, I probably finished writing it probably around 2000. It took about 3 years to get it published. It came out originally as an ebook, and then we got a print published for it, so that disappeared. And so the print publication came out early 2003. So yeah, we're now in 2020, so we're getting close to 20 years of it being out in print. So
Yeah.
it still amazes me that it's been out and around that long.
Did it seem like yesterday that it came out then?
It doesn't seem like all that long ago. Surely not close to 20 years, but yeah, it's getting there.
And when you first released it, did you realise the kind of impact that it would have in terms of, I mean, when it first came out, was it a kind of like, bang, there was this big impact, or was it kind of a slow, kind of like a snowball effect in terms of how it's kind of gained in popularity?
It's really been more of a snowballs kind of slowly. I don't know that we really knew exactly what to expect. As I said, it took 3 years to get it published because my agent and I took it to a lot of publishing companies. A lot of editors said, we like your book, but our marketing department says that men will not buy a self-help book. And that was really pre-Amazon for the most part, being such a force, pre-Kindle ebook readers and stuff. So they said, no, men don't buy self-help books. I mean, that sounds probably silly to hear that today. And so it took a while to get it out there. What really got it out there is that I'd been beating the bushes trying to get media visibility, and then a couple of local newspapers where I lived in the Seattle area both ran articles about me and the work I was doing with Nice Guys in the same week. And in the U.S., national media picked up on that. So several major news organizations, 2020, and got a lot of publicity. And so all of a sudden, the publishing industry took notice. Oh, maybe we should publish this. So we got a contract right after that. And I think it was published by Barnes & Noble originally. They were into the book publishing business for a little while. I think they're probably bankrupt now. But the books, they had a co-publisher and they'd continue to publish the book. I think they were hoping that it would stir up a controversy, that there would be some kind of big backlash against it and there'd be a lot of media hype. And that never actually really happened. There's nothing all that really controversial about it. It's just teaching men to be good men.
Yeah.
And so what happened is, it was out there, and it was probably 6 or 7 years before I started to notice just a little uptick in royalty checks. And then over the last 10 years or so, those checks just keep getting bigger every year. So it's kept selling, and the sales keep growing every year. So it's really, like you said, been that snowball that it got a little notice at first, and then because I think a lot of the spread has just been people telling people about it. You said you shared it with other people. Now with so many people doing podcasts and blogs, that's really helped spread it. There's so many online forums where people talk about it. Prior to that is probably like some guy in his 12-step group. Alcoholics Anonymous tells another buddy about it, or some guy in Mankind Project told his buddy about it. So I think it was a lot of just word of mouth to really grow it. And now with just social media and podcasting and just the internet, it's really helped it blow up worldwide.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the kind of the allure of it, I think, is, if that's the right word to use, I think it's the fact that you kind of, as you're reading it, it verbalizes a lot of what guys are feeling and sensing on a kind of deeply intuitive level, but that have not been able to put into words or even have discussions with people about these particular topics, because I think the reference point for a lot of guys is their own fathers. And I touched upon this with a previous guest, Athol K, talking about, the unconscious. I posed a question to him about, do dads kind of really realise the kind of information they're giving to their sons? And he was like, I don't think they do. It's like it's on a kind of deeply unconscious kind of level, and which makes it all the more kind of enthralling to kind of unpackage this information for guys, because for a lot of guys it's the first time they've ever read it. You know what I mean?
Well, and what I've been working with men now for well over 20 years. My background and training, my doctorate is in marriage and family therapy. So I built a private practice. I was doing couples therapy, and I was in my second marriage, trying to figure out why me being a nice guy didn't make my wife treat me better. I was raising her kids. I treated her better than her ex. She seemed to be unhappy, got angry all the time, never wanted to have sex anymore. And she told me, you need to get into therapy. I'm tired of your passive aggressiveness. And I had a PhD in marriage and family therapy, and I'm not even sure I knew what passive aggressiveness was. And so I actually started going to a 12-step group, and then later a therapist and a men's group, mainly trying to figure out why me being a nice guy didn't make my wife treat me better, and why she didn't appreciate me more, and when was it ever going to be my turn. And then when you talk about things kind of resonating, as I started working on me and finding out about what I now call my covert contracts, what I was giving to get, how I was looking to be appreciated and valued and avoid conflict and not rock the boat and make my wife happy, all those things I was trying to do by being a nice guy. What I was noticing is that men were coming to me in counseling, usually in couples counseling with their wife or girlfriend, and they were saying the exact same things I was saying. I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever going to meet. I'm raising her kids. I'm not like her ex. I'm not like her dad. But it's never good enough. When's it going to be my turn? She's angry all the time. She never wants to have sex anymore. And when I started hearing these guys saying, like, I could finish their sentences for them, it resonated. Oh, I'm not the only one. So what I did is I invited some of these guys I said, how about we start a No More Mr. Nice Guy men's group? And we met every other week, and I just started writing, little chapters, little blogs of what I was learning to give these guys. Since that time, that's been probably close to 25 years ago. My practice and what I do has been built around working with men. When I left private practice in the States, I now live in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I still work with men. I have an online university. I do workshops and seminars. I still write. So I continue to work on me and work with men. But what I found is that when men can get in a men's group, into coaching, especially just get around other men, and we start talking about our life experience, all of a sudden things start resonating. Whether it's around dad issues, whether it's around sexual issues, whether it's around addiction issues, and we realize we're not alone, and we realize where we've been unconscious, or where our paradigm has been leading us in ways that don't work well or don't serve us well. And we can see other guys making a mistake, and we go, oh, I can see when he does that, why that doesn't work. And then we go, but I do the same thing. I guess that's why it doesn't. So I love the beauty of like what you do, of what men's groups do, what men's coaches do, that it gives us a place to find out we're not alone. And we're not terminally unique, or we're not fucked up in any way. We're just struggling to trying to figure this stuff out. I've been telling people I had a PhD at 29 years old in marriage and family therapy, and I'm still bumbling my way through relationships. I'm on my third set of kids when it comes to being a dad, and I just feel like I'm maybe starting to figure a few things out.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because I think it's also the kind of trading of information, because I find that I find it quite a lot in kind of dads groups, typically Facebook groups, where a guy will kind of sort of come on and he'll say, my wife disrespects me, and and she speaks to me like a POS, and all this kind of stuff and whatever. And then there'll be 2 or 3 guys chime in, and they'll kind of say similar things, like just basic stuff, like kind of where are your boundaries? Have you said that it's not acceptable to speak to you like that? And there'll be 5 or 6 things, and all of a sudden the guy's like, you can if you could see a penny drop on a Facebook group, you can see it, the penny drop, because they realise, like, even like stuff like, the one thing I say to a lot of guys is, just get off your wife's emotional roller coaster. I said, they're going to go on their emotional roller coaster, whether you like it or not. But you don't have to go along for the ride. You can get off it, and you can stand and you can watch them do their emotional roller coaster and let them have a whale of a time. But you don't need to get on that.
And I use that same analogy, and I add, and she doesn't want you on her emotional roller coaster. She wants somebody with their feet still on the ground, right?
But it is really funny how this kind of stuff just goes round and kind of, not in circles, but it kind of goes in on itself. But for guys listening to this and watching this interview who don't know what a nice guy, I mean, there was, I'm gonna change the name, but there was a lad at my school, and the girls all loved him. He was their best friend. They could chat to him. And they always used to say, "Oh, Steve, he's such a nice guy. Are you going to date? So would you date Steve?" No. But he's a nice guy, Steve. I really like Steve.
He's my friend.
He's my friend.
Yeah.
What is?
I couldn't date him.
So what is, you've been asked this 10,000 million times, Robert. What is the definition of a nice guy?
Well, I'll answer it for the 10,000 millionth and one time. A nice guy is we're mainly talking to dads and men, maybe women listening. There's lots of nice girls out there as well. But we'll focus on guys. A nice guy is a guy who doesn't believe he is okay just as he is. And this is an emotional belief system that he internalized at a very young age. And we can kind of dive into that if you want. And so because at his very core of who he is, he doesn't believe that is okay. He's spent his life since childhood trying to do 2 things. One is trying to become what he thinks other people want him to be in order to be liked and loved and get his needs met, and try to hide anything about him that might get a negative reaction, negative response, abandonment, punishment, whatever, from the people in his life whom he wants approval from. So in my experience, most of the nice guys I work with typically are guys that, since they were little kids, have a pretty easygoing temperament. That's not true for all of them, but a lot of guys, it's fairly easygoing. We go along to get along. My mother kind of tells every woman I've ever had a relationship with, Bobby never did like conflict. And I'm going, who does? Who likes conflict? Of course I didn't like it when I was a kid. I still don't, right? That's me. That's my temperament. Now, what happens then a lot of times because of that kind of natural temperament is that we maybe start avoiding conflict. And when you're little kids, you got no power. You can't stand up for yourself. You can't set a boundary. You can't say, stop, don't do that. That doesn't usually go over well in most family systems. So we learn to just kind of go along to get along. We maybe learn to passive. What a lot of nice guys do is we learn to hide a lot of things about ourselves. We hide our needs, our wants, our sexuality, our feelings, because we think if for those things to be on display, we're going to get negative reactions, or people won't love us, or won't want to be with us, or won't want to help us get our needs met. So nice guys are out there basically just hiding a lot of aspects about themselves to the degree that they don't even know that they're hiding those things about themselves, trying to become what they think each person they meet would want them to be in order to approve of them. And again, hiding those things that they think people might disapprove of. Now, because of this, most nice guys are fundamentally unhappy. It's not unusual to have somewhat of a low-grade depression that they're not even aware of. They don't make their needs a priority. They don't tend to invite people into their life who can help them get their needs met. They're so busy giving to other people, they often don't even realize that they have needs. As I've mentioned, they're often conflict avoidant. And ironically, while seeing themselves as nice guys, they're often fundamentally dishonest. Because if you're trying to impress people or hide things or get people to like you, you're not going to be you. You're not going to speak your truth. You're not going to just show up as you are. You're always going to have a mask on about you. And if you're trying to avoid conflict, you're not going to tell the whole truth in every situation if you think somebody might be upset. So unfortunately, nice guys, part of the package is that they do tend to be passive aggressive. They do tend to be conflict avoidant. They do tend to be dishonest. They do tend to hide a lot of their behaviors and their needs. It's not at all uncommon for nice guys to have hidden and secretive masturbation, pornography, fantasy, sex addiction type habits, because all their lives they've been hiding all that stuff, and it's got to go somewhere. So while these nice guys are out there thinking, I'll be such a nice guy and then people will like me and love me and want to be with me and help me get my needs met, the truth is it doesn't let people ever actually get close to us, really know us, and really just love us for who we are. So there's a lot of negative consequences to the nice guy paradigm.
Sounds like there's a paradox there as well, isn't there? That the irony is that in order to have the life they want to, they need to allow people to in, but in trying to keep up this kind of veneer and shield and mask to the outside world, it kind of prevents that. So
there's quite the paradox with that, because we all want to be loved and valued. We all have needs that we need help getting met. We can't do it all by ourselves. We need to be responsible for getting our needs met as adults. We're not kids anymore, but we can't do it alone. We need help. And if you're trying to hide your needs, and if you're trying to hide what you perceive to be your faults, and if you're trying to impress everybody, people can't ever really know you, and they can't ever really know what your needs are, and they can't ever really know what makes you tick. And because of that, they can't get close to us. But most nice guys are afraid of letting people get too close anyway, because they might find out how. Well, I say in the book that for a lot of nice guys, we think, for example, in terms of relationship, we think a woman would be lucky to have us, but we're not sure why a woman would want us. Now, because we think we're fundamentally flawed inside, well, why would any woman want me? But she'd be lucky to have me because I do all these things for her, and I listen to her talk about her problems, and I pay her rent, and I give her gifts, and I'll raise her kids for her, and I'll bail her out of debt, and I'll do all those nice things. She'd be lucky to have me. And then as your friend from high school, so often we either just end up getting used by women, or we fall into that friend zone. I call it a girlfriend with a penis, where women are just, they're happy to tell us their problems, but it would never cross their mind that they might want to get naked with us.
Yeah.
And so all these things that the nice guy wants to have happen, trying to be a nice guy, actually works 180 degrees against him of trying to get that to happen.
And I guess that as time goes on as well, it creates a situation in intimate relationships whereby they kind of become like a bit of a pushover, where actually, and it kind of becomes a little bit of a turn off, if you like, for their wife or girlfriend.
A big turn off.
a big turn off, because there's no kind of pushback, or because we have this, and I don't know whether it's the same over in the States, but we have this over here. We have this saying, "Happy wife, happy life." And
I think that's an international phrase.
Yeah,
probably.
It's an international phrase, but I'll never forget. And this is me putting my hands up to it, because of the fact that so many. I'm the son of a baby boomer, so my dad was born just after World War II. So we were kind of always taught that kind of happy wife, happy life, and
don't piss your mother off.
Yeah,
right?
just yes dear, no dear, 3 bags full dear, sort of thing. And I watched my grandfather do that, and I watched my father do that, but obviously often there would be kind of these big blow ups of emotion where it would go on for so far, and then there'd be kind of, like you said, a passive aggressive behaviour. And I'll never forget, on my wedding day, we went to a hotel, and there was like a registrar there and stuff, and he said to me and my wife, and he said, "Oh, you're the most beautiful couple I've seen this year," and whatever. And I was like, yeah, he obviously says that to everyone that comes up to get married. And anyway, he said you really turned out well. Who picked the outfits? And me, just being the early 20s guy I was, quipped, "Oh, that's nothing to do with me. That's that was my wife's choice of outfits. I just do as I'm told." And the registrar leaned in. I'll never forget this. He leaned in. He was probably in his 60s, I would guess. A Scottish guy. He leaned in so quietly so that my wife couldn't hear. And he said, "Take it from me, son. That is the key to a long and happy life, happy life, happy married life," sort of thing. And
I just do what I'm told.
I'll never forget that. Like 20 years on, knowing what not knowing what I know now, but having kind of educated myself a little bit more on the dynamics between men and women. But that's kind of, I'm not the only probably guy that thought that way and had that kind of schooling, if you like. So I think there's a lot of us guys out there, you know what I mean?
Oh, and I think it keeps growing every year. You asked about, the popularity of No More Mr. Nice Guy. I think one of the reasons why it keeps growing is there are more and more and more young nice guys out there. As more and more young men either grow up with nice guy fathers, as you mentioned, or they grow up in single parent homes and disconnected from men in general, growing up in school systems where it's primarily influenced by female teachers. And now there's such, you and I were talking a little bit about social media before we get on the air. There's such a meme out there now that everything male is toxic. And so if you're a little boy growing up and you keep hearing all this stuff about toxic masculinity and all the negativity towards everything male, you're going to grow up thinking, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be that toxic male. I don't want to be that horrible man. And I heard those same kind of things in the 60s with angry feminism. It's kind of like we're back to that again. So I think more and more young men are growing up that they're hiding everything about them that might be perceived as a negative masculine trait. So when the woman we're with is upset about something, again, we try to be like her girlfriend and listen to her and let her talk it through and get over it and all that. Or maybe we even get on their emotional roller coaster, or maybe we put up with them treating us badly and thinking, I'll just put up with this and it'll all be okay and blah, blah. And it doesn't. And as you said just a little bit earlier, what tends to happen, I found two things have happened because I'm on my third marriage, so I've been married a good part of my adult life. As I said, I've been a marriage therapist since in my 20s. And what tends to happen when the guy kind of takes that route is two things happen. One is that the woman both can happen. She starts just consistently treating him badly because there are no boundaries and because there's no pushback to it. And I have found that in general, women don't want to act badly, but if there's no boundary around it, they actually start feeling bad about themselves for acting badly. And then the more they feel bad about themselves, the more badly they act. And so like you say, the man that won't set a boundary or won't say, no, you have to say that differently to me, or we'll talk later when you've cooled off, or whatever the boundary might be, it interrupts that, and it gives the husband and wife a chance to have an actually more loving, mutually supportive relationship. Now, another piece that I see, and I know you've kind of alluded to, is that the women just they lose sexual interest in the guy. If he doesn't seem to have a backbone, if there's no solidness about him. My second wife, who I was married to when I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy, she used to say to me, if I don't know you can stand up to me, how will I ever know you can stand up for me? And I mean, she was right. She was right. When every time I backed down to keep the peace, keep her happy, not have conflict, that hurt her, right? It made her feel unsafe. And then she couldn't be close to me, and she couldn't feel like I would ever protect her. And then there's this other piece that comes up is, if we as nice guys keep putting up with the behavior and don't set a boundary or don't set the tone or lead or say what's acceptable, what's not, a couple of things can happen. One, I already mentioned, we become passive aggressive. We become withdrawn. We start looking at porn. We make cutting remarks. We embarrass her in public. We don't follow through on our commitments. We show up late. Whatever it is, we don't know that we're doing that because we're pissed off to get back at them. So it makes nice guys really difficult to live with because of our passive aggressiveness. Another thing that tends to happen is what I call victim pukes. And again, my second wife, she coined this term because I used to do them, where you let it build and you build and you're ruminating on it and you're pissed off at this thing she does and she does it again. And there's this double standard. And how come she can get away with doing that? But if I did that, and then finally something happens, you just blow up and you say every hurtful thing that's been in your mind, and you just devastate your partner. And I know my ex would ask me sometimes after I'd have one of those victim pukes, it was, like I said, her term, she said, how long have you been thinking about this thing that I blew up? And I said, oh, I don't know, 6 months maybe. and I remember she would ask, and in all that time, it never crossed your mind, maybe you should just talk to me about it? And I said, no, actually not. It was in my head all the time, but it never crossed my mind that I should just say, hey, we need to talk, or hey, I'm not going to take that, or we need to do that differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, different dynamics that do get woven into the relationship. In my experience, both of being in a relationship, of working with a lot of couples, a lot of women, and a lot of men, is that the women just feel safer, more loved, more nourished, more cherished if they're with a man who knows got a backbone, a man they can trust. What you see is what you get kind of guy, a guy who's good at taking care of his needs in responsible ways, who doesn't let stuff build up till he blows up. If we men are looking for a relationship with a woman who can just relax into and melt into our leadership and our presence, we've got to show up in these really clear, powerful ways, not these passive, indirect, got to keep mama happy kind of ways. Those don't serve us, and it doesn't serve the women in our life, and it doesn't serve our children either.
Yeah. And I got an insight when you were talking to me then about being able to kind of, if you can't face up to her, then you're not going to be able to face up to someone to protect her. And I've seen this in like extended family dynamics where maybe there's an in-law or a parent that is kind of giving your wife a hard time, or I wouldn't do it like that or whatever, and your wife says, oh, why didn't you stick up for me?
I've heard that many times.
Yeah, with your mum or your dad, or why didn't you stick up for me, sort of thing. And as you were talking about that was the kind of scenario that popped straight into my head, that it almost sounds like a chain that you almost need to break. You almost need to break the chain in order to kind of reset those embedded behaviour patterns, if you like.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. And again, I'll just repeat this and probably say it again before we wrap up. That's the value I see of getting connected with other men that are doing this same kind of work, whether it's a men's group, getting with a coach, some kind of men's program, online forum. In person's better, but that may be a while before we are spending too much time in person with other people. But yeah, to not have to do this alone and by yourself. I mean, I'm in my 60s. I've been working with men, like I say, for over 25 years. I've been a therapist for over 30 years. I'm still bumbling my way through a relationship, and I'm in a men's program. This is my third year in this program, and we have to have regular calls. We have workshops that's to serve me. I'm leading other workshops, and I have other programs that's my job. But I'm in a program, and just as an example, just before you and I got on the call today, I had a small group part of the men's program I'm in. So I was on a Zoom call with 5 other guys, and the program just is getting started again this year. So I know 2 of the guys on the call really well, and 2 of the other guys are new. So I'm just getting to know them. And I started the call feeling kind of, not just emotionally not great. Nothing's really wrong, but I'm like everybody else. This whole pandemic and the effect on my life is, it's had an impact. And, talk about the happy wife, happy life. My wife is currently upset about something. And she's actually usually pretty good about talking it through with me and getting over it. But every now and then she'll kind of stay stuck in this upset. And, and she's the kind of person, she won't yell and rant and rave. She'll just withdraw. Right. And so for a couple of days now, she's kind of just had this distant look on her face and kind of withdrawn and polite and still doing things for me. But no real warmth or affection in them. I mean, I can feel, I know this woman, right? I know her. I know what the problem is. It's not one I can fix, because to fix it would mean giving in to her upset, because she's created a problem in her head that I can't fix. So I'm just letting her be with it. My heart stays open to her. I'm still loving. I'm still affectionate. I'm still close to her, but I can tell she's distant. And the old me would have said, "How can I fix this? How can I get over this? How can?" And I'm letting her be while I'm still open-hearted and connected. But when I got on my call just before I got on with you with these other guys, and then we all kind of took care of a little business, and we all got about 5 minutes to check in, and I talked about how I was feeling, and I'm kind of crunchy and and within just being with these guys for 30 minutes on this call, I was already feeling better. I wasn't feeling so crunchy. I was feeling more energized. We got off the call after 90 minutes, and I'm just like, thank you. I needed that. And it's because it was one way to fill my own bucket to get my needs met, but I needed that tribe. I needed, my band of brothers.
Yeah.
That I'm convinced, I tell guys to build a healthy relationship, the foundation is built on good guy friends. And when I was doing marriage therapy, I used to tell couples, men and women, I'd say, the best thing you can do for your marriage is both of you have good same-sex friends. The woman needs her female friends. The guy needs his guy friends. That's the foundation, because, we're tribal creatures. Human evolution, for 1.5 million years, we were in tribes. We did not, cohabitate with another person of the opposite sex. We lived in a tribe. The guys did the guy things, the girls did the girl things, and then we would come and mutually support each other. But this whole, let's, move in with another person of the opposite sex and love them and only them for the rest of our lives, that's not in our DNA.
Yeah.
Having our tribe, having our guys is. So in order to be able to successfully do what we might call modern monogamous or ownership type relationships that are not part of our DNA, we need our tribe. And I think to parent, to be good dads, we need our tribe. Because as I said, I'm on the third set of kids that I've raised, and I just keep seeing over and over again, the best thing I've ever done for my kids is to have good men friends and to be connected with men. Makes me a better dad. My boys then have always liked, going and connecting. I was talking to a guy earlier on Zoom, and my stepdaughter, she's 12. She was going to go off to get some tutoring. And so she came in, had a pretty dress on, and she came in to give me a hug, and she knew the guy I was talking to. So I gave her a hug and said, say hi to him. And that's a special thing when my daughter gets to see me even if it's over Zoom, having connection with men.
Yeah.
And anytime I'm talking with my guy friends on Zoom, if my wife comes in, I'm in my office, I got glass doors. If I know she knows the guy, I'll wave her in, come say hi. They get to say hi to my wife.
Yeah.
And even though I live down in Mexico and don't live near any of my male friends, I've integrated them into my family. Many of my male friends have come to Mexico and spent time in my home, have spent the night here, have had meals with me. So my family is around them. They're around my family. My wife knows the guys I have. My kids get introduced to men from different countries, speak different languages, have different lives. So I'm just preaching. Gotta have our tribe to both have the happy relationship, the fulfilling relationship we want, and to be the kind of parents we want to be.
And it's interesting, actually, you say that, because tribes and brotherhood is one thing that comes up a hell of a lot. And in particular, in the last 3 or 4 episodes that I've done have been with military guys, and so the conversation has been around, the brotherhood and the camaraderie that you have when you're serving. And funny enough, one of my last guest, Andy Torbit, made the point that he thinks that there is a link between PTSD and tribes as well, because what he said, he said that most of the PTSD happens when guys come back, not when they're in that group. When they're in that group that is providing them the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the sounding board. They can talk about how they're feeling on a regular basis. They're in close quarter living, So it's interesting. There's so much to kind of sort of take apart in terms of that. But I think also the double-edged sword on this is the role modeling it represents to your children as well, because you are role modeling a healthy way to interact kind of with other men. And you know, if there's any time in history where role modeling to the younger generation is important, wow, well, at this time in history with, you know, the pandemic and the polarization that's going on across the world with relation to unrest and stuff, you know, having guys that, you know, have got a calm head on their shoulders, that are able to exhibit wisdom, knowledge, and, you know, a sound judgment of how to react in different situations has got to be a good thing at the moment, surely.
Well, I agree. And you use the word react there. And I know for me, in the men's program I'm in, the coach that leads it is really into practice. Practice drawn a lot from Eastern thought, Kundalini yoga. He's strongly influenced by David Data. He's worked a lot with David Data. And so we do a lot of the work that we do within the group. It isn't just us guys getting together and just talking about, hey, how was your day? We do a lot of practice, and we do a lot of things that are meant to integrate kind of like what we're learning into our nervous system, physically get it into our bodies. Because I know for me, we all carry baggage from childhood. I mentioned earlier all that stuff that we inaccurately internalize into the emotional part of our brain at a few days old, a few weeks old, a few years old. We carry it as our operating system into adulthood. Is these experiences of childhood when we were helpless and powerless are wired into the part of the brain that controls our fight, flight, freeze mechanisms. And you mentioned the whole PTSD thing. So a lot of it is integrated into that. So what happens is our operating system, emotional operating system of our brain is often hyperactivated and in the fight, flight, freeze because of just experiences we had as kids of feeling abandonment, of neglected, being yelled at, being scolded, being shamed, being, you know, whatever our experiences were. And so what most men do is we grow up and we usually just try to distract ourselves from those things. We play a lot of video games, watch a lot of TV, smoke a lot of pot, look at a lot of porn, go try to make a lot of money, building a click funnel on the internet, whatever it is, we often distract ourselves. But then when we get into relationship and all of a sudden, you know, our nervous system is being constantly activated by our partner, by our kids, whatever is down in that fight, flight, freeze part of us often then reacts, right? And in ways that we're often not proud of. And we wished we didn't do that. So even, like I said, in my 60s, and I've been working on myself since I was in my 30s, I'm still working on how do I integrate a different way of responding to stresses in the world into my, not just thinking about them differently or saying, oh yeah, next time I'm going to try that instead. That doesn't work, you know, because something's going to trigger you and you didn't see it coming and boom, that same old, you know, thing is going to get triggered and you have the reaction. So we as men, again, we got to do this in tribe. Is where we learn to, in a sense, rewire our nervous systems to where we can respond to things in conscious, open-hearted, you know, loving, embodied ways rather than just reacting. And then we got to, you know, pick up the pieces and clean up the mess afterwards. I still do. I still react, and I go, oh, I didn't see that one coming. But it's the same thing I didn't see coming 50 other times as well. So it's a process. Yeah. But again, I couldn't do this work if I didn't have a tribe of men. Like I said, being online with my tribe just where I talk to you. And I've got several of these little mini tribes built that I'm in contact with all the time. It's just done wonders of, like I said, rewiring my nervous system to where, you know, like I said, for 2 days, I know my wife's had this thing churning inside of her. And in the past, I probably would have tried to drag it out of her, or I would have blown up, or I would have, you know, accused her that her brain's just making stuff up. And now I've just, for 2 days, I stayed open-hearted, stayed present, stayed loving. I continue doing the work that I need to do. I'm talking to you. I'm doing the other stuff I need to do. I'll go exercise in just a little bit. I may go relax in the pool or read a book later on. You know, I'll still take good care of me. but I've had to work to rewire my nervous system to where I can actually do that and not be just a jittery mess constantly because mama ain't happy.
Yeah, yeah, and I like that because one of a previous guest, Oscar Trimboli, was talking to his expertise is deep listening, and what he said about the dynamic between men and women is that he says to his wife when she's talking to him about something, his response is, "Do you want me to fix, or do you want me to just listen?"
Yeah.
Because not all of the time do ladies want you to fix. They often just want you to. And one thing that kind of, when you were talking about the your nervous system, what I've noticed in the last little while in our relationship, and again, I think it just comes from a level of awareness where you're just a little bit more aware, is I find myself thinking, well, who's modelled this behaviour to me in the past? And it's been really good in some respects, because I've been able to see where my behaviour has been modelled to me by my own father, and by the same token, we've been able to have some really actually frank discussions where my wife has realised that certain behaviour has been modelled to her by her mother. And obviously
Go figure.
And we don't kind of, we don't like, and we both don't like it. We know we're doing exactly what our parents did, and it annoys the hell out of us. So being able to catch each other and kind of actually pick each other up, not in like an egotistical kind of criticising way, but just to say, look, you reminded me of someone here, and then it's enough to kind of catch yourself and like, actually, let's try a different way of dealing with this. Do you know what I mean? It takes kind of a bit of parking your ego at the door, but it's almost like you could probably even do it even if you had like a code word or something, so that it's a it's a non-critical way of going about it. So you could use a code word like something stupid like banana, or something ridiculous, that when your partner is kind of coming out with something which you can see is a trait of their parent, you just kind of diffuses it a little bit. You know what I mean? It's a very recent thing we've come across, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and you guys are raising your consciousness by having open, caring discussions, and as you raise your awareness and consciousness, you guys can rewire your nervous system, because even just like saying banana, brings a different nervous system response than, why are you being such a bitch? It's going to bring a completely different nervous system response, and that's the even like I said, even though we're not evolutionarily wired to have these lifelong monogamous relationships, I still believe that they are very powerful personal growth machines. And if there's love there, and a willingness and a commitment to challenge ourselves, to work through difficult situations, man, we can grow tremendously. I mean, every relationship I've ever had has grown me tremendously. And so I'm listening to you talk about you and your wife, even just a little thing about how can we talk about this differently? How can we give each other different feedback? And it lets you guys both grow. And your kids are watching that. Your kids see how you and your wife are doing it. And I know, like I said, I've got two step kids that are 12 and 14. And I've got my biological son is 35, so I've got a 13-year-old granddaughter. I have a granddaughter the same age as my stepkids, and I've been in the stepkids' lives now about 5-6 years maybe, and I'm dad. I'm Papa, I'm Poppy, and we don't speak the same first language, so communication. My Spanish keeps getting better. I live here in Mexico. My wife and kids are Mexican, and they're learning some English. But I found for like the most loving thing I can do for my kids is keep working on the interactions I have with their mom.
Yeah.
So like if they hear me like blow up and I'm venting about this and that, we always get over it. But then I watch, they both kind of get their own anxieties up about it. My stepdaughter kind of becomes a little clown or entertainer. My son starts showing up like, can I help? Can I fix anything? Can I do anything? But and I watch the effect it has on them, and I always feel, I don't want to do that to them. And it's kind of like, okay, I got to keep working on this stuff. And, my partner is not the problem. My wired in reactions are the problem. I can keep learning more tools and use my relationship as that powerful personal growth machine. There's so much love between us. I know we'll just keep working on this stuff. And that's the gift that we give the kids. And so I know the kids have already seen us go from having some of these kind of blow ups that my wife and I both decided we'll both go work on it in our own way. Mm-hmm. They've seen us manage those things so much better and get through them so much better. And what a great gift to give the kids to see, oh, that's how you do it different. That's how you do it better.
Mm. And a lot of it's just simple things sometimes. Like we've found a lot of value in just having the agreement that, okay, if there's something that we need to discuss, or if I'm, disciplining the kids and she doesn't agree with how I'm doing it, we do it in a closed door room, so that they're not within earshot of us kind of debating what our strategy is going to be. So little things like that, and also kind of, if I don't agree with what she's doing or she's not, we agree that we're gonna stick behind each other until a little bit later, then we discuss it. Because what happens is, otherwise, she's saying, well, I didn't agree with what you did there, or I'm saying, I didn't. And then the kids pick up on it, that right, weakness in the armor.
We can use that.
We're going to leverage this against you, and which is not a problem when they're kind of toddlers, but mine are like 8 and 11 now. So if they're going to leverage it, they're going to leverage it, definitely.
Well, and they will. I was just sharing what I'm going to say with a group I was talking to, I think just yesterday. I've said for a long time, since my background is marriage and family therapy, I've often said that the job of both parents is to protect the kids from the other parent. And that's not in a hostile kind of way, but you're going to bring your own imperfections to parenting. Your wife's going to bring her own imperfections. And if there's a foundation of love between you and your wife and with the kids, you are going to unconsciously do things that are not the best thing for your kids. And if your wife can then, if you guys have good communication later on, say, by the way, I don't think that was the best way to handle it. Or you might do the same. And there's different, like the banana example, you just have a keyword. My wife at times tries to help my stepdaughter with schoolwork. And my stepdaughter does not do well at math. She's got certain learning disabilities around it. And my wife is one of those people that's just, she's good at stuff. So when she's good at it, she just gets it. And she's not necessarily so much good at math, but she'll be sitting there trying to help my stepdaughter work through math problems at the kitchen table, and her voice will keep getting louder and louder and louder. And I'll be in my office in another room, and when she's starting to, in my perception, yell at my stepdaughter, I'm thinking, that's not going to help her with her math skills, and that's not going to make her any more relaxed in terms of it's already a struggle to do math. So I worked out an agreement with my wife. I said, I didn't ask her. I said, here's what I'm going to do. If I sense that you're stressing, our daughter out by raising your voice while you're, quote, helping her with her math, I said, I'm just going to walk in the room, walk over and give you a kiss and just kind of smile at both of you and then walk back out again. And I've done that a number of times. And the first time or two, I think my wife was a little resistant to it. And then she hasn't been. She's come to realize, oh, okay, I do that. I get kind of wound up and my voice gets too loud and it doesn't help my daughter. And just me walking in and just giving her a kiss. How you girls doing? And then, walking back out again. That's all. Yeah. Right? There's no walking in and saying, stop yelling at her. That's not helping her one bit. Because that won't help.
Yeah.
But giving a kiss breaks up all that energy.
Yeah.
And they can reboot and start over again.
Yeah. And again, it's non-confrontational as well. We have this with my my eldest daughter is autistic, so she has meltdowns. Not as much now, but you can get nights where she's kind of really kind of het up sort of thing. And we know that, depending on what day of the week it is, I could be Mr. Cool, my wife could be Mrs. Cool, and it goes in fits and starts, but we kind of do what we call relay racing. So we have a kind of rough agreement that, if I think that she's like what you just said, if I think she's kind of losing it, I'll kind of say, do you want me to take over? Or if she thinks I'm kind of losing it, she'll just put her hand on my shoulder and, do you want me to take over, sort of thing. And
what
then
a beautiful gift. Yeah. That's each of you protecting the kids from the other in a loving way, not in a, oh, you're an asshole for being that way with the kid. It's we're all imperfect parents, and that's the beauty. If mom and dad have a sound enough relationship that has good enough communication, enough love, we can keep becoming better parents. We can keep becoming better moms and dads.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Robert, was, and you touched upon this earlier on in our conversation, but I wanted to kind of circle back on it because I think it's a very important point to discuss, is covert contracts.
Okay.
I've mentioned this to so the listeners can hear what they are about before, but I wanted to re-emphasize it because I think there's a lot of power in discussing what it means in a man-woman relationship, but also how I think it can creep into the relationships in sort of the wider family and extended family, and it can also. I've seen it almost become like a kind of cancer in all family interactions, covert contracts. And
well, let's dive into them then, because I personally think if I was to say anybody what I think the most valuable piece of information is in my book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, it would be covert contracts. They're so simple and so illuminating at the same point. Now, I'm going to even present them even clearer than I do in the book. I've continued to do this work in the 20 plus years since I wrote it. So nice guys tend to operate by three pretty consistent covert contracts. Now, the covert contract is just that. It's a contract, but it's covert. It's hidden. It's not in the open. It's not expressed. And they're all fundamentally manipulative. They all fundamentally have strings attached to them. And they're all if-then propositions. So I'll give you all three. And they're all pretty simple. The first covert contract of nice guy syndrome is, if I'm a good guy, then I will be liked and loved. And for single guys, and have sex with the hottie that I desire. You know, if I'm a good guy, she'll want to get naked with me. So that's covert contract number one. If I'm a good guy, I will be liked and loved. Now, we were talking earlier about some of the paradoxes of nice guy syndrome, is the whole thing, as we were talking about, the whole thing about being a nice guy actually makes it harder for people to know us and like us and want to get close to us. And then we often wonder, why? How come women aren't attracted to me? How come I don't have many guy friends? And how come, I try to treat everybody well, but nobody seems to like notice me or appreciate me? Because it's that covert contract. And all of them, as I said, they're hidden. And they often represent almost a childlike magical thinking. If I'm a good guy, then everybody's going to like me. Well, number one, what do you mean by good guy? Am I the judge of that? And everybody's going to like me. Well, not everybody's going to like anybody. There's nobody out there that's universally liked, right? Especially now with the internet and Facebook, nobody likes anybody, right? So that covert contract. So I'm out here trying to be a good guy. Everybody's going to like me and love me. But I don't even like myself because I'm not even letting me just be me. So covert contract number two. This is really a big one. It's the one that bites me on the ass all the time. There's a whole if then, if I meet everybody else's needs without them having to ask, then they will meet my needs without me having to ask. Now, you talk about extended family. That's where you see that show up. Somebody did this favor for somebody else. Somebody made this sacrifice for somebody else. Somebody went out of their way to do this thing for somebody else, and it wasn't acknowledged. It wasn't appreciated. It wasn't paid back. It wasn't, there weren't enough slaps on the backs and thank you and blah, blah, blah. There wasn't, mutual effort to do the same in return. Yeah, that shit shows up all the time. And again, it's this hidden covert thing. Like, I'm going to read your mind and figure out what you need, which that's a definition of codependency right there. I'm going to give to you what I think you need. And often, like you talking about the other guy you interviewed, we're listening to our wife talk about her problems and we think she needs our solution to fix those problems. And sometimes, no, the feminine brain just tends to gotta talk this stuff out and get it out and let it be out there. And then sometimes they don't even want a fix. They just want to get it out of their head, right? And then, but wait, I gave you a fix. How come you didn't go apply it? How come we're still talking about the same problem again today? And so, and then that other piece of it is because nice guys are so terrible about taking responsibility for our needs. We're going to give to other person, hey, I read your mind. How come you're not reading my mind to know that I want to have sex right now? How come you're not reading my mind to know that I want to be left alone to watch the game on TV? How come, I read your mind, why don't you read mine? And then that builds up so much of that resentment, passive aggressiveness, and add to that, nice guys tend to be terrible receivers. We actually feel guilty if people try to do things for us. Just before we got on the call, as I said, I had a short break in between a group that I just got off a call with, and my wife had been out running errands for a good part of the day, so it's the first time her and I kind of checked in, and she said, you want a sandwich? And I said, no, I'm not really that hungry. I don't want to eat a sandwich just before I go do this interview. And she said, can I cut a mango or an apple for you? And there's that part of me that goes, no, I'm okay. And I thought, my wife is offering to do something for me. And I said, yes, please, cut me a piece of fruit. So I pulled up the chair at the bar. She cut up a mango. It was delicious. But there's that part of me that often, no, I don't need anything. I'm good. And so I've actually had to learn to let people do stuff for me because they want to, right? Who am I to rob my wife of the joy of doing something for me when she knows I'm about to do an interview on the internet? So that's covert contract number 2. If I meet your needs without you having to ask, then you'll meet my needs without me having to ask. Mm-hmm. Covert contract number 3. If I do everything right, then I will have a smooth, problem-free life. Now, this covert contract has many holes in it as well. Number 1, who's to say I've done everything right? There's a few kind of maybe universalist rule books out there about how to do it right. Maybe the Quran, the Talmud, the Bible, a few things like, here's how you do it right. But in every one of those books, they say, and nobody ever gets it right. So they even say, yeah, you're not going to ever get it right. But the nice guy thinks, I get everything right. If I just say everything just perfectly to my wife, or if I'm single and I approach a woman and I just have the right pickup line, or if I just do everything right at work, everything should always go smooth and I should never have any problems. But we don't live in a smooth, problem-free world, especially if we're going to interact closely with the opposite sex and live with them and think that we're going to speak the same language. I mean, I don't even speak the same language as my wife. It has nothing to do with gender. And we think that's going to work easily and smoothly. No, it never does. But the nice guy, like my mom said, Bobby never liked conflict. I think, well, if I do this right, if I'm doing everything to make you happy, you should never get upset at me. It just doesn't work that way. And then when our covert contracts that have these unconscious strings attached that nobody knows about, when we've been the good guy, when we've met everybody else's needs, when we've done everything right, and the woman we love doesn't want to be with us, our wife doesn't always treat us well, our kids don't always appreciate us and respect us, the boss doesn't always see that, hey, I'm worthy of the raise, and we go, wait, I did my side of these contracts. How come we might even blame it all on God, even like, God, I'm this good guy. How come I'm sick, or how come I lost my job, or what? So these, like I said, they're childlike and magical thinking. And a big part of recovery from the nice guy syndrome is growing up, is recognizing being good doesn't make anybody like you. Being yourself actually has a lot higher odds of being better liked. I'm responsible for meeting my needs, and I've got to surround myself with people and professionals and organizations to help fill my bucket. That's my job. And that third one is, I'll never get it right. I'll always fuck up. I'll make mistakes. That's just part of being human. Yeah. And life is always going to be chaotic and disruptive. That's the nature of universal cosmic existence. Everything is in constant change and flux, and it's not always smooth. The whole coronavirus thing, we go, hey, that shouldn't be happening to us. It is just what happens. It's part of the experience of all things living.
Yeah.
So
And
those are the covert contracts.
And it's interesting the way you describe those, because you can see how those covert contracts would play out in a workplace as well, where people think, actually, if I'm the good worker, if I do all the things that my boss has said that I should do, and people don't realise that these can play out in the workplace, and they can foster quite a lot of dissatisfaction under the hood, so to speak, where people were not, they're doing everything on the proviso of something happening or them getting something in return, and it kind of not happening, if you like. And sometimes employers sometimes are quite cute about people that will always do something, it's the person that will always work a few extra hours without expecting.
They'll take advantage of it.
Yeah, they're going to leverage that sort of thing. So,
of course they will.
But also on that third point, where you said about perfectionism, I see that a lot playing out in second marriages, and in the scenario where the first marriage hasn't gone kind of quite well. So what happens?
The starter marriage, as they're called.
Yeah, the start marriage doesn't go quite well. So the second marriage, what they do is they're like, oh shit, I must have made some mistakes the first time around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double down and do everything right and make everything perfect. And then these guys find themselves a year down the line into their second marriage, and their wife is berating them like a child in public in front of all their friends. And they're scratching their head, thinking, "Hang on a minute,
I can't be divorced twice. I can't walk away from another one."
Yeah. And I see that happen. Yeah, I see this kind of shit. I mean, I don't like to use the terms of alpha and beta too much, because sometimes I think they get overused. But I think
I agree with you.
I've seen it where guys on second marriages swing so far in the beta direction that it almost becomes worse than going too far in the alpha direction. Do you know what I mean? And so I think there is a healthy kind of like a middle ground in this, and I think healthy is probably the word for it, rather than middle ground, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah. In fact, let's pull this together. I'm gonna have to wrap this up for today, but yeah, let's just wrap it up on that piece, because oftentimes nice guys will say to me, "Well, I want to find the middle ground between. I don't want to be the nice guy, the passive doormat. I don't want to be the asshole jerk. I want to find a middle ground." And my response to that usually is, I don't know where the tipping point is between two dysfunctional extremes. And like they say in 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, the opposite of crazy is crazy. So if you're trying to be the opposite of a nice guy, well, that's not going to work. If you're trying to be the opposite of the asshole jerk, that's not going to work. And where I make the distinction is that how I define nice guy recovery, it involves several components. It usually involves learning to release our shame with safe people, because it's often our toxic shame that fuels a lot of behaviors. It's learning to soothe our anxiety, because a lot of nice guys' behaviors are driven by our anxiety that we don't want to feel, so we're trying to manage people and situations. It involves developing an integrity of self that we can ask ourselves, what do I want? What's important to me? And then we follow through on that. It involves that tribe that I mentioned. And mainly it involves, again, that rewiring of our nervous system, that now, instead of responding to inner anxiety or shame, trying to do our old covert contracts, maybe we're learning to practice and experiment with trying some different things, like just listening, or just being honest, or just saying, don't talk to me that way, setting a boundary, removing ourselves. And so it's not becoming a little bit less nice or a little bit less asshole jerk. I think I call it just a complete fundamental shift of being that is built around, as we let go of that toxic shame, we can be more of ourselves. As we work on our anxiety, we can take risks and do things that frighten us. As we have that deeper integrity, we know what we value and what's important to us, and we can assert that and follow through on it. And it just takes on a completely different feel, whether it's in our daily life, whether it's with a relationship, at work, with our kids, with a buddy. It just has a completely different energy about it. It feels better and more fulfilling, even if it feels anxiety producing to get there at times. And to me, kind of a really cool side effect is it makes us more attractive in general to just people. Because we're real, we're honest, we're not managing anxiety, we're not hiding anything. We're not trying to fix anything. We're not trying to be liked by anybody. And it's just a lot easier to hang out with a person in that state of being.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm really glad that you touched upon that, because one of the things that a lot of guys say to me just regarding the book is that they're worried about over alphaing it, and I think it's really important that you've given that clarification, because I think guys listening to this will be, okay, I get that, I get what we're working towards here, and it's a lot more clarity around that, rather than this kind of these opposing poles of the you know, the spectrum. You know what I mean? So yeah, that is really
good.
Helpful.
Glad that was helpful.
Now, one of the things that I usually kind of ask guests when I'm drawing the interview to a close, and I've not prepped you for this, what would you say is the thing that gives you meaning, Robert? I know that this may have shifted in the last little while, because I know there's been you had I think you had a health scare a year or two ago or whatever. So what gives you meaning in life, Robert?
Yeah, you know, almost dying about 2.5 years ago ties into it. But, you know, when I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy, I didn't set out to write a book. Mm-hmm. I was beginning to discover things about me. And as I started sharing them with other people could resonate with that. That, I think, is in a nutshell what gives me the most meaning. Is I'm just, for whatever reason, I'm kind of committed that if I struggle with something, I want to figure it out. And, you know, as I'm working at figuring it out, I seem to, you know, I'm a teacher by nature, I guess. I share what was making sense to me with other people. And I think the really blessing that I get out of that is people that email me, message me, or take my classes or do a workshop and say, Robert, thank you. You've changed my life. Your book changed my life. What you teach has made all the difference. I can see things differently. I've had guys say, I've read every self-help book on the planet until I read your book. None of them sunk in. And, you know, and that feels good. And that's different than a codependent kind of thing of, oh, good, I'm making the world. It just feels good to know people sincerely value the work I do on me, and then what I put out in the world as a result. So that's off the top of my head the best answer I got for you.
No, that's all right. That's all right. And if you were to say one thing to the ladies of the world, specifically the wives and girlfriends, what would that thing be? Knowing what you know now, 2 decades down the line.
It would be appreciate the hell out of your man and let him know many times a day in every way you can think of to express it how much you appreciate him.
Excellent. We can't ask for a better sign off than that from Dr. Robert Glover himself. What is the best way for people to find out about you and the work that you're doing, Robert, and reach out to you or look you up on social media and stuff?
Yeah, I'm really easy to find. If you Google No More Mr. Nice Guy, if you Google Robert Glover, I come up in all the top spaces. My primary website is drglover.com. That's just drglover.com. I have another website, datingessentialsformen.com. But if you go to drglover.com, or if you just Google me, you know, you'll find all the little tentacles I've got out there in the cyber world.
All right, super. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on to Guild of Dads and speaking to me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've covered all bases, I think, in terms of the book. I'd recommend people that if they're watching this or listening to this, to pick up a copy of the book, have a read through it with an open mind, you know, listen to some of the concepts and try out some of the breaking free activities. It's a fantastic book. And I want to say, Robert, I appreciate you, the work that you've done. I know it has a massive impact on a lot of guys' lives. I know, in actual fact, you yourself have said that on more than one occasion, it's saved guys' lives as well. So appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the invitation.
Likewise. Thank you very much.